tide would snuff out these ashes for good.
Hello. I wanted to go over my thought process for creating this track, which was inspired by Yuka Kitamura and her work in Dark Souls 3 specifically. Now, there's a lot going on in this project. This is definitely the biggest one I've done to date. Much bigger than the last Yuka Kitamura inspired project, and much more than I think the Millennia inspired soundtrack. A lot more automation, a lot of MIDI going on, especially in the second phase. But I wanted to break it down and kind of go over my thought process behind how I want to create and emulate this style. The first I want to go over is the MIDI, choosing your notes and choosing how to create what I call these brush strokes. Now, a lot of Kitamura's style is based on creating, at least like, she has many types of like styles. She like beyond a lot of her tracks, she knows how to create a very moody atmosphere, and I think that's kind of one of the main personalities behind her music in Dark Souls 3 is creating that atmosphere. And a lot of those tracks have a very disturbing or somber type of feeling. And this is very prevalent in, let's say, Sister Frida's first phase. Abyss Watchers, more somber. Dancer of the Borealis. That one is very, like, it's eerie. It's strange. It's very, even though it's very minimal, it's creating a very eerie atmosphere with very minimal, very purposeful instrumentation. Now the MIDI here, as you can see, we're in D sharp minor, and there's a lot of, let's say, the lowered second or the lowered ninth of of this, which is E. So immediately we're doing dissonant, out of key stuff, and I want to highlight every time I do this. So she's gonna sit on this pedal tone of D sharp, so I have this just sitting throughout the track. And I'll go back to showing the regular orchestration, but I think having the piano is just easier, because it's very, like, it's not as many instruments to go through. Not a lot of the raised seventh, which, you know, a lot of her tracks do, but we do this very sparingly, and much more in the second phase. But that's how you create that epic feel. We don't want epic right now. We want creepy, eerie, and that's why I want that the half step down ninth, which is the E. Of course, A sharp is the power chord of this, or the perfect fifth. And we're kind of just sitting on this D sharp, and E, and just playing whatever over it. So we want to create that atmosphere. We just want to hit these notes. Doesn't matter how you do it. We just want to hit them not together. You want things coming in the left and the right ear, and slowly fading in, fading out. And slowly we want to start building up a sense of character. So now we're kind of showing a little bit of the melody here, which is more explained by this chorus section. So she does have a chorus section. She does have a main section. You want something to be latchable onto. You don't want this to be like pure ambience and pure just droning. But once you have a semblance of a melody, take it away. And that's what this section is. Build that tension up. Hit that D again, which is the raised seventh, and then we go into our main. This is our big chord. This is the chord we've been sitting on. We're gonna unleash it. Repeat it a little bit. Make sure this melody is iconic enough to be repeatable. As well as she likes to start off her phrases not on the main beat, and I use the solo violin and the solo vocalist for this part, and then the whole orchestra comes in here. What do we do here? We fuck it up. We make it demonic, we make it weird again. We're sitting on the flattened 5 right here, the A, with the D sharp. So right now we have this tritone. Go back to the tritone here. Now that you're hitting back on this raised 7th, now we can start, you know, making it feel like it's ready to transition again. And what this sounds like with the instruments, let's see, let's just have the vocalist and the solo violin. Now we'll talk about instrumentation of this section of phase 1. Yuka Kitamura likes to have her own voice and violin. She's an excellent vocalist and she's an excellent violinist. And even some songs have multiple versions of her playing the violin, or multiple Kitamuras singing along in the song. She's very creative in that sense. I like this a lot. And if you want to recreate her style, she does this in a ton of tracks. She does it in Bloodborne. She does it throughout Dark Souls 3. Her solo violin and her solo vocalist combo, everywhere there. As you can see, it's not a complex portion. She's mostly sitting on the D sharp, which is the root of the scale that we're on. Deviating a little bit when the rest of the orchestra is also going to be sitting on E. Go back to the D sharp, and we're just sitting on there. We're creating this palette of D sharp. And this voice, that's like the most prominent thing that you'll hear, is always on that D sharp. Almost completely mirroring what was happening with the vocalist. We're separating them here. So the vocalist plays, the violin plays a very similar melody, and then she'll hit this note again, leaving us off with a D sharp, and then she'll just let it trail. So it's about creating these like it's like a very it's not sloppy or lazy, it's like loose. You're creating these loose brush strokes to create this kind of very moody atmosphere. Nothing's grounded yet. You want to be constantly building up, not fully releasing the tension, but just hit the tension a little bit, just so that you have more places to build that tension back up again. Because this is just such a creepy section. It's eerie, it's beautiful. Let's bring in some other instruments. We have the violins. These violin 1s, violin 2s. Create that tension. We have that A, the flattened 5. As well as, we're hitting the D sharp and the C sharp. Every staccato or spiccato is very planned out. You don't want just having a flurry of staccatos and losing your viewer, your listener. Every piece has to be deliberate. And we're establishing the rhythm here. We're establishing triplets. And we're establishing kind of a call and response. The dun 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 dun. And then you have the cello underneath. Let's get the cellos back in. So the cellos are creating that response that's happening with the violins up here. What are the bass strings doing? Because right now we don't have any brass. Like, it's mostly just the solo choir and the string section. We have the bass and the timpani right now doing wonders. The timpani and the bell. Very loose brushstrokes. That's what I mean by here. So we have, you don't need to see the bell. The bell is just playing D sharp the whole time. But this timpani, every note counts. You don't want to have timpani everywhere, just like how we do in phase 2. But here, it's very delicate. Delicate is, I think, is a perfect word for this. It's every note counts, and every note has to be very deliberate to create this atmosphere of unease. And then you can be a little bit more formal and more on the beat. It's a very simple melody, but now we're no longer doing any weird stuff. We're just fully sitting on what the scale is providing for us. We're hitting the 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3, and then we start building back up. Now we can do some weird stuff. Here you can kind of let a little loose, because you've established your main riff of the song. Now you gotta break that down. You gotta mess up the viewer, keep them on their toes. that timpani, dun dun, bring you back into the next section right here. Like, you want it to be smooth. Everything flows in together. You don't know when the next part's gonna come, and it's very slow. It's very deliberate. That's kind of the first phase what I had in mind. Also, something I wanted to note was these breaths. So obviously this is a VST. This isn't Kitamura actually coming in and recording with my microphone. But these breaths originally used to be me. So right now it's up pitched by 230 cents. Bring it down. That's me. So I recorded myself breathing into the mic. Okay, that's enough. Like up pitched it and kind of add some reverb, remove some of the lows, made it match the choir, or made it match that solo vocalist. Now we end up with an effect like this. Whether you want to have this or not, it's up to you. I think it adds like a nice little humanization detail to it. Another big thing, drones and atmospheres. I have these. I have some tremolos hanging out in the background, and this is their modulation. This is so Dark Souls 3. Like some wind ambiances, some like really long breaths. You want to create that creep atmosphere, and all the Dark Souls 3 tracks have it. They even go all the way up to Heel Store, I shouldn't have said his name. The final boss theme for Night Rain. Even he has a bunch of ambience in his intro, because he's also doing the creepy kind of soft brush strokes. And that's a lot of Kitamura's style in Dark Souls 3. These are kind of the big points I want to cover in phase 1. Now, in phase 2, this is where she also has a very distinct style of. She wants this really big, bombastic phase 2. And how does she do this? Big brush strokes now. It changes from her small brush stroke set, and now she has her set of enormous brush strokes. What I mean by this is giant, fat chords. She does this with the choir. Everything's filling each other. Everything's complementing each other for a certain chord. And that's kind of just a very simple way of looking at it. Whether people like this or not is up to them. I know some people think that the Dark Souls 3 bombastic sections sound a bit generic because they just all use the same formula, but you know, that's your style. I personally love this because that's just so, it feels like Dark Souls 3. It feels epic. It feels like you're fighting a god or a evil tyrant, Pontiff Sullivan, or Nameless King. Actually, no, Nameless King doesn't have this, and he's not Kitamura. But you know, Lady Maria, Soul of Cinder, those things just feel big. And how they do this, let's look at the piano over here. It's a little intimidating at first, but yeah, so I raised everything up a half step. Yeah, so now we're in the key of E minor. This D sharp, this raised 7th, we're going to be hitting that all the time. That's how you create this big epic feel. You create a very fat major 5 chord, and then you just go back to your 1 chord, the E minor. This is something Kitamura loves to do. This is like her bread and butter. And you kind of want to sprinkle this all in your track. At least how I went about doing this was I had a beginning, this E minor chord, and an end, which is the 5 major chord. And you can kind of fill whatever you want in this, you know, minor 4 chords. You can do some diminished 2nd chords, mostly those actually. Maybe some minor 5th chords like how Slave Knight Gale does it. But I created an endpoint. This is where your big tension is. Then you release it with this 1 chord. It's the same thing. 1. We go back to the 5 major, and she'll do this. This is like the very obvious way of doing it. It's just major chord here, and then you step down. You have a constant beat underneath. That's how you get that energy, that just strong, keep going, high energy. then you can kind of go, then she goes crazy. So that was like our very big chorus moment. Again, she goes crazy. And when I'm writing this beforehand, so I wrote all this in piano before I even wrote MIDI for it. But that's just how I like to write, and I already have the choir in mind. I want something energetic. I want something that's not totally just da 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 da. Like, I want it to have energy. Da 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 da. Like, you want things to spill into each other, create build-ups into each other. That's what this little bit here is. That's what this little bit here is. Da da da. Like, this is kind of your rhythmic bread and butter. You're gonna have this. This is what creates your personality of a track. This is what makes it unique, because Kitamura does this with a lot of her tracks, but each thing still has a very unique part of it. It sounds like a unique track. And if you pick up on these little details, subconsciously or consciously, you recognize that each song has such a different flavor and world from each other, even if they all sound loud and bombastic. Let me get the choir here to really show what this means. I got the men and women here. So big brush strokes. And what I mean by that, so you have the one here, mostly by the G and the B. Then you're going to that tritone, which was the this one here is that sits on the raised seventh, which is also, you know, the diminished chord that's on the second. That's a big one that she does. Grave Tender always does this. That's a great example. It just goes 1 2 4 2 1, and just goes a bunch of that, then to a giant 5, back to 1, and then you just do 2 4s and 1s again. So that's kind of your big section. Kitamura gives you some time to breathe, which, thank you, because this is very intense. That's kind of what this section is, which is very similar to how the first section does it. We're just sitting on a chord. We're just sitting on the E, and then we can kind of do whatever we want here. A lot of that is going to be in the E, B, and G, which is all in the E minor chord. Create a little bit of tension, and then we just comfortably go back to it. Get that E and G again, your big 5 chord here. Then you start the big section. Now here, you know, slow it down. This is particularly inspired by the Half-Light Church theme. We're kind of just very slow, big blocks. Even if it's big blocks, we still have transition ones. These ones give you some way to step into the next section very easily. It wouldn't be Dark Souls if you didn't hit that flat 5 and made a big chord on top of it. That's just how you get a dark sound. So you don't want it. I didn't want this to be a whole like Sunshine and Rainbows big epic. Like, I want to have some little, like, touch the darkness a little bit. Then we go back to epic. You know, remind the player that, hey, you're supposed to die here. You're not triumphing this fight. And then we end. We just sit on the 5 now. That's kind of the big gist of phase 2, because these choirs are the ones carrying this whole thing. You have the timpani. Timpani, very, very important. Let me show you this. So she loves doing triplets in here, and whether that's in 3/4 or you're just doing triplets on top of 4/4, doesn't matter. Make them 3. She always does this for phase 2. Not always, but there's a good chance she's going to do that to make it more epic. And a lot of her songs are in anyways 3/4 or 6/8. That's just like a very classic medieval feel to them. It has a lot of energy when you start accenting them with the timpani. You can see here they kind of build up dun 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 dun. That's kind of how Dragon Slayer does it. Dragon Slayer is a great example because that just kind of has a bunch of timpani playing with the low strings. Dun 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 dun. And there's not even anything playing on top of it. Like she just has a section where she's just riffing with that cello, bass, and the timpani. And this is how you create your energy. And where are your bass strings? What are they doing? That's a good question. They're also doing a bunch of staccatos. Look at this. They're also just keeping in line with the timpani. Bunch of triplets. Up here is where your rolls are. So I have a lot of rolls into new sections, and it's just carrying the energy forward. Other than that, there's not much automation because they're all just going full blast. She oftentimes has tempo slowdowns before each section, so that's what I do here. Creates a sense of epicness, and I kind of do that for every big major section. I don't have a ton of ambience here because I would just kind of clutter the mix. There's already so many instruments playing at the same time. Wires and brass already fill up so much sonically. Then you have some giant percussion, even with these big sections. So I'll end it off with, you know, some other things that we put on that Yuka Kitamura does. Even with these big sections, she still has her voice on top of it. She's the star of her own songs, which is just like no one else does that, which is why her songs in Dark Souls 3 are so unique. So she's doing that classic 5 right here. Da, da, da. It's just like always. It's always hitting. Look at this. I'm not even starting this on the beat. Like it's. Da, 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 da. Like you want to finalize that moment. This is the solo violin. So both her and the violins hitting that giant 5 right here, hitting that D sharp, which is right going up to E right here. It's just, those are the stars of the show, and they're always leading you to where you want to go. And it's just epicness. That's, I think, I think that covers everything I want to talk about in this video. Covering over this track I made inspired by Yuka Kitamura. I personally think she's a fantastic composer, and I am just in love with all the tracks that she makes in the Dark Souls series, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring as well. So, you know, this is just something that I want to do so I can really study, understand, kind of deconstruct how these songs work and what she's thinking. And I think taking these little bits in here and there and taking things from the songs that she's made and then piecing it together is kind of how we can understand what she's thinking when she's making these songs. Feel free to ask me any questions. You know, I'll have more tracks that I'm working on in the future. Different styles, different composers. But hers is definitely stand out to me, and I really want to understand what's going on in her head with that. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.